You ever wondered what it takes to talk someone down in an intense situation? My name is Scott Medlin. I'm a former police officer, and in this video, I will be speaking with retired SWAT hostage negotiator Scott Tillema, and we'll break down the 4 essential principles for negotiations. So even if you're a current police officer, you will find this information useful and interesting. Let's get right to it. Scott, my first question is, what are the foundational principles every negotiator must understand? And I will also ask, not just for the negotiators, but any officer that arrives on scene and there is a negotiation that has to happen.
Yeah, first of all, let me start by saying thank you for the time today. And I love your work. So let me just start off to your listeners what a cool opportunity this is to hang out with you. Now,
Thank
to
you.
answer your question, all of us, if we are out there dealing with people in crisis, whether you are a SWAT negotiator and you're doing this with a SWAT team, or you're one-on-one with a mental health crisis or an everyday life crisis, I teach there are 4 principles that guide these interactions, 4 big concepts, and I boil them down to one word each because under stress and under pressure, we need something that's helpful to us. So these 4 ideas, these 4 concepts are simple: understanding, timing, delivery, and respect. These are 4 pieces that have to work together. And I see this functioning as a circle, that without each one of these things, you're not going to have a circle. You need all 4 of them to work. And I think that most people who've been doing the job for a while realize that it's critical to use these things. But if we have in our mind this visual that I'm working to understand the situation first, I don't need to jump into action and make a critical decision unless, of course, you do. Then go ahead and protect yourself and do what needs to be done. You never need to put yourself in physical harm's way, of course. But if we have the luxury of time, let's understand what's going in. We can't solve the problem if we don't know what it is. So we ask good questions and be good listeners, because your power in negotiation comes from information and options. And how do we have that if we just rush into the situation? So let's not assume anything, have a blank slate, and work to understand what the situation is. The timing is knowing when to deliver your message. And sometimes that just allows the stress to come down. The person realizes you're not a threat. You actually are there to help them, and you're willing to listen. And just by letting someone vent and share their stress with somebody, that might solve half of your problems right there. So you have understanding, timing, delivery is not what you say, it's how you say it. And when we're under pressure, the first thing that goes is our delivery. We don't have awareness of our person effect or how others are experiencing us. So if we can be thoughtful in the rate, the rhythm, the pressure, the volume, the tone, these different aspects of what we're saying, all of a sudden we can be experienced completely differently. Because I can say the same words in all kinds of different ways, but if we just adjust that delivery, then it's going to have a different impact. And then respect is more than being respectful. Are we understanding the drivers of human behavior? Number one, that we are emotional people making emotional decisions. And particularly with young officers, we're tempted to come in and we do the logic and reason. Well, if you do this, I'm going to take you to jail, or you could get more jail time. We're using logic and reason on a person that's in crisis that can't even process that. We're making decisions based on emotion. So let's get in touch with their emotions and try and connect with them and drill down to some of the behavior drivers that are common to most people in most situations. So my number one advice: 4 principles that guide your crisis conversations or your everyday conversations: understanding, timing, delivery, and respect, over and over and over. And by doing that, we create a bond. And your goal is to create a bond, is to create a connection, because once we have that, then we have influence. So often we try to get right to influence and tell people what to do and use our authority and position to make them do things. But guess what? You're going to find out quickly that doesn't always work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, solid advice, Scott. I know someone's going to benefit from this. Police officers are really solution-driven individuals overall, broad stroke here. Really solution, and we want to fix things, stuff like that, particularly when we arrive on scene and take control of the matter to fix something. But that means we have to do one of the most hardest things that it is for us people to do, and that is listen. So what is the role in active listening when it comes to negotiations?
That's everything. I mean, I remember being trained by the FBI back in 2007. Super cool. I got selected to be on the SWAT team. Really exciting. They're going to teach me the magic phrase to say to make people do the things I want them to do. But how offensive was it when they're like, "Hey, we're going to teach you how to listen"? And that's the moment where, like, I'm a professional. I'm grown up. I got this part down. Let's just move on. But the entire class Monday, we're learning the active listening skills, the 8 skills of active listening. Tuesday, we start skill building. Wednesday, we're doing listening exercises. Friday, we're doing back-to-back round listening. And as it turns out, I wasn't nearly as good of a listener as I thought I might be, or I probably, could have been. So it comes down to being a good listener, and how many people say, yeah, I'm a good listener, but maybe we're not. And it's not something that we need to be embarrassed by, but something that we need to acknowledge that we could all of us could do better at this. And we could spend probably a full day class discussing active listening skills, the 8 skills of active listening. And if that's not familiar to you as an officer, you need to understand what that is. There's great books about it. Never Split the Difference is a popular book by Chris Voss on negotiation. Essentially, it's the 8 skills of active listening boiled down in a book with some stories. So I think that could be a nice resource for you. But even trained SWAT negotiators, and I speak at, I've spoken at nearly every state association conference, and I'm always impressed by how little we know around this. Like, this is foundational stuff. And when I challenge people and ask people and put them on the spot and test them, we don't know this. So even for these SWAT negotiators, you need to be able to rip off the 8 skills of active listening, more than just I know what they are, but to be able to do that. And there's a process here that we have to go from knowing what these are to the skill of being able to do that. And once we do that long enough, then we get to that third step of it becomes who we are. So if nothing else, learn. I think two of the most important are open-ended questions, asking good open-ended questions, because under stress, we default to close-ended questions. I've done reality-based training, scenario training with officers endlessly. Under stress, if we're going to ask a question, it's going to be that yes or no factual information piece. I want something that's going to create dialogue. So I have 10 or 12 really good questions that you can ask at any time that's going to create a dialogue, connection, influence. So I ask good questions. And then emotion labeling, connect with the emotion. So often we get stuck in the cycle of connecting to the words that they're saying or responding to the words that they're saying. And we have to get beyond that position and get to the interest behind those words. What are they really interested in? What do they really want? Let's forget what they're saying and connect with that emotion. Hey, you sound really frustrated. You seem upset. And we label that emotion. And once we let them know, hey, I actually get it, by labeling that emotion rather than saying, oh, I understand, I get it, forget that. No, nobody buys into that. Do that emotion label. And that's the moment where you're going to hear, and they're going to chill for a minute and be like, okay, maybe this person actually might get how I'm feeling now. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to express to you how they're feeling.
Absolutely. And you touched on it. I kind of want to expand on it just a little bit and quickly. That phrase, I understand. Now, I used to say that to people. I used to say, I can't relate, but I understand what you're saying. And then I realized, well, that wasn't even right to say. So there, in addition to I understand, are there any phrases you would recommend people, particularly when those default type of phrases we go to in emotionally charged and pressure situations, avoid saying?
Two that I like to remove is, number one, I understand. And the second one is the word why. Now, this may seem counter to what I just said. If we want to solve the problem, we want information and options. So one of the really good questions is, why are we doing this? But the word why creates defensiveness in the other person. And if you're not sure on this, next time the sergeant or lieutenant calls you into the office and starts the conversation with, hey, officer, why did you do? You're immediately, yep, that's what he's talking about, because you're being questioned. Why did you do this? Why didn't you do this? And you're going to have that moment of, oh man, now I need to be defensive to somehow justify what has occurred. So the word why creates defensiveness. Defensiveness is a block to dialogue. We want to have open dialogue. We can ask the same question with a different word. Hey, that's interesting. What makes you say that? That's interesting. What makes you ask that? That's interesting. What makes you do that? And we're asking why without using that word that creates a little bit of defensiveness. But if I could take out I understand and take out why, what I would add is a phrase right now. And what can be super powerful for somebody is using the words right now. So instead of discounting and problem solving and say, hey, things are going to get better for you, things are going to improve. Oh, it's not that bad. We're discounting what's going on and say, be real and take it in. Hey, life is really difficult for you. I can see life is difficult for you right now. Because if we say life is difficult for you, this is an unchangeable thing. Yes, it is. There's nothing we can do about it. But if we say life is really difficult for you right now, I can see you're really struggling with this relationship right now. Hey, I hear that your finances are really in trouble right now. It changes everything. It gives some perspective that we get to turn that page. We can turn that page together, and things aren't always going to be where they are in this moment, and that we have to look forward to tomorrow.
Very good information for any officer looking to enhance their ability to communicate, to which it is a skill. It is like any other skill in law enforcement. You have to maintain practice and knowledge about it, in my opinion. Where could they find more information about what you have to offer? But in addition to that, are there any training platforms you would recommend or anything like that?
There's so much good information. And one of the things that really changed my perspective on things is, believe it or not, there's a whole world of training outside of law enforcement. We just kind of get stuck in our own little circles and these one or two speakers or trainers or just in-house stuff. We can learn so much beyond the world of law enforcement. So if I could suggest a book for somebody who's interested in influence and leadership from the perspective of crisis hostage negotiation, one of my mentors, Dr. George Kohlreiser, he has a book called Hostage at the Table. One of my favorites, is a life-changing book. Really, really love his work. Just terrific around bonding and connection. Like, nobody has had more of an influence or an impact on how I think around this than George. So Hostage at the Table is a great book. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about my four concepts, I have a TED Talk out there. The Secrets of Hostage Negotiators is a little bit old, but the concepts are still the same, and I think they're still relevant for people in the space. If you really want to go deep into the negotiation space, check out Harvard Program on Negotiation. They got programs around negotiation and leadership that I think are really, really eye-opening, to say there's a world of influence and negotiation beyond what we know. Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, has 6 principles of influence that might be important to those out there who are practitioners wanting to influence others. Maybe it's for leadership, maybe it's on the street, maybe it's and your side job in sales, wherever it is. These are really cool research principles to how to move people in our direction. It's more than asking nicely. It's more than please and thank you. It's more than I'm Lieutenant so and so. No, it's how we really connect with people and move them in the direction we want them to go. And there's tons of resources available.
Outstanding. Last thing for you, Scott. You recently retired from working how many years in law enforcement?
I did just over 20 years in the Chicago area.
Alrighty. So, to anyone interested in getting into the profession or those who are new to it, what advice do you give so far as like exciting times? There was definitely a plus, but hey, be real about certain things on how to navigate the hardships about it.
Yeah, it's a challenge. You have to take care of yourself. You are the one person who is going to take care of yourself. Don't get so overwhelmed in this world that you've lost your outside interest. Remember, this is a job that pays you money. And at some point, someday, you're no longer going to be doing this job. And hopefully you get to make that decision when it's over. But don't limit yourself in what you can do. Continue to build your interests outside of just your current assignment. Continue to look forward and say, what do I want to do next? And maybe you can do that in conjunction with your role in law enforcement. Maybe you're planning for your retirement or your exit from law enforcement. And the reason that recruits now are getting hired largely is because they're talented. They're good people. They're working hard to do this. So I trust you do have knowledge, skill, ability that can take you all kinds of places. So think about specializing in one area, get really good in one area, but continue to keep your options open, see what's out there. That's going to change over time. I thought I'd be really cool working undercover because that was my internship. I found out really quickly that I'm not the right guy for undercover for a variety of reasons. But keep your options open, see what's interesting to you, see what you're good at, and continue to build your whole self and take care of yourself.
Thank you to Scott for all that great information. Click right here to watch your next video. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care and may God bless.